You know, she thinks she's got you all figured out. She believes you'll always be there, always available, always chasing, always proving yourself. But what happens when you stop? What happens when you flip the script and do something she never expected? Most guys don't dare to try this. They're afraid that if they pull back, she'll forget about them. But that's not how it works. See, attraction isn't just about chemistry. It's about mystery, uncertainty, and knowing when to step back so she can step forward. People don't value what's always there. They take it for granted. And if you've made her the center of your world, you've already lost the game. Not because she's bad or doesn't care, but because that's just how human nature works. But here's the twist. The men who understand this, the ones who create space, who aren't afraid to walk away, who know their own value, those are the men women never forget. And today, I'll show you exactly how to become that man. All right, if you're ready, let's begin. Most men think they need to convince her, impress her, prove their worth until she finally sees their value. But the truth is, the moment you stop making her the center of your world, the power shifts. Not because you're playing a game, not because you're trying to make her jealous, but because you're showing something rare. A man who is whole on his own. You don't need to convince her to want you. You don't need to analyze her every word, second-guess her every move, or wait for her approval like it's the missing piece to your happiness. Because it's not. And the moment you realize that, the moment you truly start living like a man who is perfectly fine without her attention, everything changes. Marcus Aurelius said it best. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's what most men overlook. They spend all their time trying to change how she feels, when the only thing they actually control is themselves. You don't control her emotions, her choices, or whether she comes back. But you do control how you carry yourself, how you respond, and whether or not her absence shakes your foundation. And here's where it gets interesting. When she senses that you no longer orbit around her, when she realizes your mood, your confidence, your sense of peace isn't tied to her approval, something shifts in her mind. She starts to wonder, why aren't you chasing? Why aren't you reacting? And more importantly, why does it suddenly feel like she's losing you? That's when she starts to feel exactly what you once felt, that uncertainty, that curiosity, that urge to get a response. And here's the kicker. It's not manipulation. It's human psychology. Because the moment something isn't freely given anymore, we start to value it more. The moment someone pulls away, we feel the space they've left behind. And the men who understand this, the men who have the strength to walk away, to be completely at peace in their own world, to show through their actions, not words, that they don't need anyone to complete them. Those are the men women can't forget. There's something undeniably attractive about a man who is emotionally steady, not cold, not distant, just unshaken. A man who doesn't react out of fear, a man who doesn't need constant reassurance, a man who moves through life with quiet confidence, knowing that no matter what happens, he will be just fine. Women can feel that energy from miles away. It's rare, it's different, because most men, they panic the moment she pulls away. They overthink, analyze every text, replay every conversation, searching for where they went wrong. They start chasing, not realizing that the more they push, the more she pulls back. But the man who stays centered, the man who isn't shaken by her silence, that man stands out. Because when a woman expects you to react, to double text, to prove yourself, and instead you remain calm, composed, focused on your own path, it sparks something deep in her mind. She starts to wonder, why isn't he affected by me? Why does he seem so sure of himself? What changed? And the more those questions circle in her head, the more you occupy her thoughts. Not because you're playing a game, but because she can feel something different about you. She can feel that you're not desperate for her attention, that your world doesn't revolve around her approval. Epictetus taught, we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them. Most men suffer because they judge a woman's silence as rejection. They see distance as failure. But the man who understands detachment, he knows better. He knows that the only thing he truly controls is himself, his mindset, his actions, his energy. And that kind of self-mastery, that kind of peace, it's magnetic. Your value has nothing to do with her attention. Nothing. Whether she's blowing up your phone or acting like you don't exist, it doesn't change who you are. It doesn't make you more or less of a man. Because your worth isn't tied to her presence, her affection, or her approval. You were a man of value before she entered your life. You'll be a man of value long after she's gone. But here's where most men go wrong. The moment they meet a woman they like, they start handing over their self-worth piece by piece. They start adjusting, performing, twisting themselves into whatever they think she wants. They become overly available, overly agreeable, thinking that if they just prove how much they care, she'll stay. But that kind of energy, it's repelling, not attractive. Because deep down, she doesn't want a man who's waiting to be chosen. She wants a man who has already chosen himself. A man who isn't searching for validation because he already knows his worth. Marcus Aurelius put it best, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. A man of value doesn't seek approval. He embodies it. He doesn't need to convince anyone of his worth because he's built it through his discipline, his purpose, his self-respect. And that's what makes him stand out. Not desperation, not people-pleasing, but presence. A quiet, unshakable confidence that says, I don't need you to see my worth, I already do. And that mindset, that's the difference between a man who chases and a man who is chased. Most men think if they just say the right words, send the perfect text, or explain themselves enough, they can fix everything. They think they can talk their way back into a woman's heart. But words don't create attraction. Space does. That's why the man who understands his value doesn't chase with words. He lets silence do the talking. When you step back, when you remove yourself from her life, you create something she isn't expecting. A void. And in that space, something powerful happens. She's left alone with her own thoughts, her own feelings, her own memories of you. She starts replaying moments, questioning things she never questioned before. She begins to wonder why she feels your absence more than she expected. Most women never get the chance to miss a man because most men never give them the space to. They fill the silence with texts, with calls, with desperate attempts to reconnect. But when you resist that urge, when you hold your ground and say nothing, that silence becomes a mirror that forces her to reflect, to ask herself if she made a mistake, to realize the difference between having you and not having you. And the longer that silence stretches, the more she starts to feel it, deeply. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Your silence isn't just her trial, it's yours. It's the test of your strength, your patience, your ability to trust your own worth without needing immediate validation. Most men break under this pressure. They reach out too soon. They cave because they can't handle the uncertainty. But the man who masters his silence, the man who can stand firm in the absence, that's the man who never needs to chase, because eventually she comes looking for him. So before we dive into lesson number 5, we'd like to take a moment to thank you for staying with us halfway through this video journey. In every moment, we can learn and grow, and the fact that you are here listening and reflecting with us is a tremendous gift that I cherish every minute. To help us spread these valuable lessons to even more people, please hit the like and share buttons for this video. Each share is a small but meaningful act, much like the timeless lessons Stoicism offers. Let's continue exploring and embracing these everlasting pieces of wisdom together. Once again, thank you for your continued support. Most men panic the moment they feel her pulling away. They start overanalyzing, replaying every conversation, searching for where things went wrong. They let fear take over. Fear of losing her, fear of being forgotten, fear of what it all means. And before they even realize it, they're blowing up her phone, checking her social media, looking for any sign that she still cares. Not you. You don't play that game. You don't beg. You don't scramble to prove your worth. You stay calm, because you know something most men don't. Control over yourself is the only control that matters. Epictetus said it best. It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. And that's the difference. Most men react to her silence, to her distance, to their own insecurities. But you respond, not with desperation, but with composure. Not with neediness, but with presence. You show through your actions that your peace of mind is yours. It's not something she can give or take away. And here's what happens when you do this. She notices. She expects you to chase, to overextend, to seek her out like every other man has. But when you don't, when you remain steady, focused, unbothered, something shifts in her mind. That's when she starts feeling something she wasn't expecting. Respect. Because a man who can't be emotionally controlled, a man who won't be shaken by silence, by distance, by uncertainty, that's a man she remembers. That's a man who stands out in a world full of men who crumble. And that's the kind of man who never has to chase because he's the one they always come back to. What is rare is valuable. It's human nature. When something is always there, always available, always within reach, we stop noticing it. We stop appreciating it. But the moment it becomes scarce, the moment we feel we might lose it, suddenly it matters more than ever. A Stoic man understands this. He moves differently. He knows his time, his energy, his focus. These are his most valuable assets. So he guards them. He doesn't give them away freely. He doesn't waste them on people who don't appreciate them. Because he knows the moment something is too easy to get, it loses its worth. Marcus Aurelius said, "Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought." And this is where most men go wrong. They hold her in their thoughts too much. They obsess. They make her the center of their world, and without realizing it, they send a message. I need you more than you need me. But the moment you shift your focus, the moment you make your own life the priority instead of making her the priority, everything changes. She feels the difference. She notices the space where your attention used to be. She starts wondering why you're not so easy to reach anymore. Why your energy isn't wrapped around her every move. And that curiosity, that's what pulls her in. Scarcity creates value. It always has. So when you stop offering yourself without limits, when you start treating your time and energy as something that must be earned, you instantly become more attractive. Not because you're playing games, but because you're showing something powerful. You are a man with a life, a mission, a purpose. And that kind of man, that's the man she doesn't want to lose. Weak men explain. Strong men enforce. That's the difference. Most men think they need to justify their boundaries, like they owe someone an explanation for why they won't tolerate certain behavior. They say things like, "I just don't like when you do that," or "I really wish you wouldn't treat me that way." But a man who truly respects himself doesn't ask to be respected. He simply removes himself when he isn't. No drama, no emotional outbursts, no long speeches about what he deserves. He just walks. A Stoic man doesn't beg for respect. He doesn't argue for it. He doesn't try to convince someone to value him. Because the moment you start explaining your worth, you're already losing. People don't respect words. They respect actions. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That's the energy you need to carry. If a woman crosses a line, if she disrespects you, if she plays games, you don't argue. You don't plead. You don't try to make her see your side. You step back. You let your absence speak louder than any words ever could. When a man enforces boundaries without explanation, it makes her wonder, why isn't he reacting? Why didn't he argue? Did I just lose him? That uncertainty is powerful because it forces her to reflect, to reevaluate, to chase the respect you never even asked for, but naturally commanded. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you show through your actions. A man who follows through on his words, who refuses to tolerate what doesn't align with his values. That's a man people remember, and that's the man she won't take for granted. Most men fear losing her. A Stoic man fears losing himself. That's the difference. Weak men grip too tightly, overcompensate, and hold on even when they know she's pulling away. They believe that if they just try harder, explain more, prove their worth, she'll finally see their value. But that kind of fear-driven attachment does the opposite. It pushes her further away. A man who truly values himself doesn't chase what isn't his to keep. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't try to force someone to stay. Because he understands something most men don't. If she wants to leave, you let her. If she loses interest, if she starts acting distant, if she no longer sees your value, you don't resist. You don't panic. You don't try to convince her of something she should already know. Marcus Aurelius said, "Accept whatever comes woven in the pattern of your destiny." That's not weakness. That's strength. The strength to accept what is instead of clinging to what was. The strength to understand that a man who truly respects himself doesn't fear losing a woman because he knows he will never lose the right one by walking in his truth. And here's the irony. The moment she realizes you're not waiting, the moment she feels that shift, that's when everything changes. Because suddenly, the power isn't in her hands anymore. Suddenly, she's the one questioning. Did I misjudge him? Did I walk away from something real? Why isn't he chasing me like every other guy would? That fear of loss, that realization that you're not sitting around waiting for her to decide your worth, that's what makes her start chasing you. Not because you played a game, not because you used manipulation, but because you showed strength. And a man who has the courage to walk away, that's a man a woman will always look back on. The more we lack something, the more we crave it. That's just how the human mind works. We don't truly appreciate something when it's always there, when it's always available, always reaching out, always trying to be seen. But the moment it's gone, that's when we start to feel its weight. And that's exactly what happens when you remove yourself. When you stop checking in, when you stop showing up, when you stop making her the center of your attention. At first, she might not notice. She might assume you'll come back, just like most men do. But then the silence stretches. The space where you used to be starts to feel empty, and suddenly a thought creeps in. Did I underestimate him? Did I lose something valuable? And that doubt, that's what brings her back. Because now, for the first time, she feels what you once felt. The uncertainty, the absence, the shift in energy. And it forces her to see you differently. Not as the man who was always there, waiting, but as the man who had the strength to walk away. Most men can't do this. They can't handle being absent. They fold. They reach out too soon. They give in to the fear of losing her. But a man who understands his own value, he doesn't rush to fill the silence. He lets it do the work for him. Because in the end, it's not what you say that makes her realize your worth. It's what she feels when you're no longer there. And when a woman starts to feel that absence, when she starts wondering if she made a mistake, that's when she starts chasing you. A Stoic man doesn't sit around waiting to be chosen. He chooses himself. He doesn't waste time seeking approval, chasing validation, or bending over backward to prove his worth. Because a man who truly knows his value understands one simple truth: the prize doesn't chase. Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." And that applies to everything, including relationships. The man who constantly craves a woman's attention, who needs her validation to feel complete, is already at a disadvantage. He's operating from a place of lack, of scarcity, of believing he isn't enough unless she chooses him. But a man who sees himself as the prize, a man who moves with confidence, who builds his own life, who doesn't place his happiness in the hands of anyone else, that man doesn't chase, he attracts. Because deep down, women don't want a man who's desperate to prove himself. They don't want a man who rearranges his life just to fit into theirs. They want a man who is already complete, a man who stands firm in who he is, whether she's there or not. Think about it. Who do people admire more? The man who's constantly seeking attention, or the man who commands it effortlessly? The one trying to prove his worth, or the one who simply is? It's the shift. That's the shift. That's the difference between a man who waits to be chosen and a man who knows he is the prize. And when you step into that mindset, when you truly own your worth, you'll never have to chase again. Because she'll feel it, and she'll be the one chasing you. You belong to yourself first, before her, before any relationship, before any outside approval. You were already whole. The real victory isn't winning her back, making her chase, or proving your worth to her. The real victory is realizing you never needed her in the first place. And that changes everything. Because the moment you truly understand this, not just in theory, but deep in your bones, you stop chasing. Not because you're playing hard to get. Not because you're trying to trigger a reaction, but because you finally see the truth. Your life, your happiness, your purpose, they were never supposed to depend on someone else. Most men don't get this. They build their entire identity around the idea of having a woman by their side. They believe that once they win her, life is complete. And that's exactly why they suffer. Because when she pulls away, When she loses interest, when things don't go as planned, they fall apart. But a Stoic man? He never places his sense of self in someone else's hands. He doesn't cling, he doesn't beg, he doesn't break when things don't go his way. Because his foundation is internal, not external. His happiness isn't borrowed. His confidence isn't conditional. His peace isn't negotiable. And the moment you embrace this truth, the moment you stop seeking validation from anyone but yourself, the moment you fully own your value without needing her to confirm it, that's when everything shifts. That's when she feels it. That's when she starts questioning. That's when, without you even trying, she starts chasing you. Not because you wanted her to, not because you manipulated the situation, but because you became something rare. A man who doesn't need to chase anything. And that is the hardest lesson of all. This isn't about tricks or playing games. It's about becoming a man who's unforgettable. Not because you chased, begged, or proved yourself, but because you knew your worth from the start. When you stop making her your focus and start choosing yourself, everything shifts. Walking away with quiet confidence, enforcing your boundaries without drama, and embracing silence instead of chasing. That's when the power changes hands. That's when she feels your absence and starts to wonder. Not because you manipulated her, but because you showed her something rare. A man who doesn't need to be chosen because he's already chosen himself. So remember this. Your value was never something to be proven. It was always meant to be realized. If this resonated with you, hit that like button and share your thoughts below. What's the biggest lesson you've learned about self-worth? Let's keep this conversation going. Thanks for joining Stoic Heart today. Stay strong, stay grounded, and until next time, keep cultivating your inner strength. We'd love to hear your thoughts or suggestions for future topics, so drop a comment below. See you in the next video.